Hello, everyone, and welcome to our continued conversation series with WorkView and experts, where we learn from real recruiters, real participants, and those in the workforce that are navigating not only their place in today's evolving world of work, but really committing to empowering individuals to map their own futures, build their own careers that work for them as opposed to someone else. So my name is Sabina Mahmoud. I'm co-founder of WorkView, the platform committed to helping individuals map their futures and ensure that they're building a career that works for them, aligns with their values and their skills. And we're really excited to continue our series today with a program we've titled "From Your CV versus the Algorithm." It's not a fair fight, but you can still win. And we're really excited to have expert recruiter and founder here, Sharon Alred, to walk us through what the job landscape looks like today and how, as individuals, we can set ourselves apart as we map out a career in the evolving, turbulent, dare I say, turbulent workplace right now. Sharon, welcome and thank you for joining us. Sharon joins us as a co-founder and director of Signature Recruitment, specializing in over 20 years in recruiting, co-founding Signature 16 years ago, and supporting specifically small and medium enterprises to get the right people in the right places to thrive, guiding SMEs through their early growth, through the messy middle, and as well as taking some of those companies all the way through, and individuals all the way through to FTSE 100. So you've sat in boardrooms for crucial hiring periods, you know hiring decisions are made. I imagine in the 20-year time span, you've seen quite a bit of change. So we will jump right into that. For participants and those on the line today, 98% of Fortune 500 companies are running resumes or CVs through applicant tracking systems. What does that mean? That means there's likely an algorithm or a bot on the other side pre-screening resumes for those who are looking for new roles, and it can be hard, to say the least, to cut through the noise. In the turbulent landscape, it's not only overwhelming to apply for roles, but setting yourself apart is increasingly a challenge. And we know that that is only exacerbated by the introduction of artificial intelligence and those automated tracking systems that are continuing to develop over time. Sharon, I'd love to start with the introduction and just hear a little bit about you, what you're seeing in this space, and how you really hit the ground running. That was those 16 years ago, I should say. And then we'll jump into some questions on today's landscape.
Yeah, indeed. Well, first of all, thanks so much for having me. I'm looking forward to sharing the other side of the fence with those looking for work. It's a conversation that I have on a fairly regular basis, so it's nice to have the message amplified to others who I think will truly benefit from the insights that I'm able to share. So in terms of context as to where we are today with applicant tracking systems, so known as ATSs, which blend into CRMs, so client relationship management tools that often recruiters as well as in-house recruitment teams will also use. The systems, of course, have become more sophisticated over time. However, we are very much in an AI doom cycle, whereby we have candidates using AI to produce CVs, and then on the other side we have recruiters, both in-house and agents, also using AI. So the two are really unhelpful. I think we're seeing this across other sectors and other professionalisms at the moment, whereby the volume and noise created from the use of AI is quite something. So what's happening is internal recruitment teams and agencies are having to adopt and use these tools to cope with an increase of applications for roles. So in the last year alone, I'm aware of in-house recruiter teams of having a double in applications from last year to this year, and then that was back on a double of the year before to the year before that. So the amount of work coming through that needs screening by a human is exceptional. So of course they're going to look to counteract that to make sure they're selecting the best talent in the market. They don't have time to review 4,000 CVs by hand. So there's various things that are happening, and I want to take both of those two key things to the audience today. One is how CVs have always been screened, so using Boolean strings, and the importance of language in those places. And the other piece that I want to take to the audience is the additional layers, and although they're frustrating, I want to explain why they're being put into place. So if we start initially with the CV itself and why it may not or may be getting through the AI algorithm, or perhaps the Boolean string, which is less sophisticated, but ultimately they're doing the same thing. They're looking against the job criteria as to who's going to be the most suitable match. In the UK, with the ICO, it's illegal to automate that decision making. However, you can use that for recommendations. So of course, if you have an inbox of 4,000 CVs for one vacancy, of course you're going to work with those recommendations. Why wouldn't you? That's why you have the tool in place. So it's not making the decision, but it is there. So there are ways around these things. So Boolean strings will simply do a language match. It is a very basic code. So if I'm looking for a qualified accountant, I might search for that particular qualification. So for example, I would type in CIMA or ACA or ACCA, which would be the UK qualifications that I'd be looking for on the CV. If a candidate has one of those qualifications but hasn't specifically put that wording on, I'm not going to find them. So all AI is doing is amplifying that. So things that I'm seeing regularly miss those kind of screening processes are a simple language match, where, for example, you might have stakeholder management instead of client management. As a human, we know it probably results to the same thing, the same function. However, the AI or the Boolean string won't necessarily recognize that. Now, you would argue that actually these tools need to be sophisticated enough and understand the nuance of language to be able to pick those up. But if you want to fight these tools, you need to get ahead and be clever and take your time to subtly adjust your language. Don't lie, don't exaggerate, but adjust your language to be able to play snap and make sure that you're getting through this sifting exercise. So a simple way of making sure that you're doing this is to use, the SMART goals analogy. So looking at things that are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely. If you can apply that to the responsibilities that you've had within a job, are they specific? So are they specific against this particular job application? Are they measurable? Are you able to demonstrate the specific impact that you've had relating to this particular role? Are they achievable? So I would flip that into what are your key achievements that you made during that particular project or that particular 3-year piece of employment within that company. Are they relevant? Now, this is one that people trip up on all the time, and I'm going to use the example of a car garage. So if somebody was a marketing manager for BMW and I work outside of that sector, I will make an assumption as to where you worked. Was it the head office? Was it the brand? Was it a dealership? Based on my assumption, I'm going to imply to your experience whether or not you are in fact relevant for this particular role. So you need to tell me, were you working in head office with a team of 30 other marketeers and actually you were very focused on a particular category within that? Or were you a generalist working in a regional setting for a branch? They're very different roles, but unless you tell me that, I don't know. And that applies to the algorithm as well as the human that's reading your CV. Make it timely as well. Everyone wants to know that you can hit a deadline and that you can work under accountability. So if you repurpose the phrase SMART goals and apply it to your CV and make sure that you're playing snap against the very particular language and specific terminology used in that job description and job advert, you're much more likely to get through the Boolean string or the algorithm or the AI, depending on how sophisticated the ATS tool is that companies are using.
Amazing. Thank you for that. And I think for our audience who's not familiar with the term Boolean, essentially, it's yes or no, right? So the algorithm is looking for, yes, this candidate can produce this outcome or has this skill set, or no, right? It's not necessarily what we're hearing from you, Sharon, is it's not necessarily reading through the lines, and that can be absolutely overwhelming for individuals who are applying day in and day out to different roles and not hearing back. So an incredible tip. Thank you. So what does that mean? I'm going to ask for some myth busting here, right? So as companies themselves are receiving over 4,000 applicants for one role as an example, if not more, time in and time out. The applicant on the other side is also applying, right? Perhaps not for 4,000 roles, but a handful a day. Um, and what I'm hearing from you is that we need to think specifically about the role we're applying for, not just a single CV for every single role that you're applying for. So a bit more tailoring. It's a little bit of myth busting here. Should we be redoing our CV or updating our resume every time we apply? Or and what are the tools that can help us, right? Is it a problem if we're using AI to write our CV over and over again, or do you think that's an advantage of the technology?
Yeah, great question. And there's been several schools of thought about this over the last couple of years, and those different schools have come from people using the tools badly. Whether or not it's using Microsoft Word or AI, it doesn't matter. You're using the tool well or badly, ultimately. So you're producing either a great document or not so good. So it's not necessarily the tool that's the problem, it's how you're using it. In answer to your first question, yes, you should be tailoring your CV per applicant. Should you be using AI to do this? Yes, absolutely. Should you be using it properly? Absolutely, because as a recruiter, I can tell within seconds whether or not you've used AI. Does that put me off? No way. I want to know that you're AI literate. That's a key part of a skill set within the white collar workforce these days. And actually, if you haven't used AI, I'm probably going to question why not. I want to know that your CV's been tailored. I want to know that you've taken the time. In terms of prompt setup, I'm going slightly down a tangent, but we're here, so I'll go there anyway. My advice would be when you initially approach a job search, 3 things should be set up ready to go before you go live. You should have your master CV, which is true to you and shows that broad experience. In addition to that, you should have a separate document which has much more detailed, specific, broader sets of examples, experience, key achievements, specific responsibilities. What this does is allow you very quickly to swap in and out relevant skills that you need to demonstrate against a particular job application, rather than racking your brains for when was that time, when did I do this, etc. So make sure all of that is collected. You should also make sure your LinkedIn profile is up to date and again has that broader stroke, that higher level breadth of experience. Don't go into too much detail because remember you're going to make sure your application is bespoke depending on the role that you're applying for. However, you do need to make sure your LinkedIn profile is up to date because people will be looking at that. They'll also be checking other social media channels if your name comes up on Google. So again, I just make sure that you're mindful, is that giving the right impression and the truest version of you when somebody searches your name and what comes up. So if you have those documents in place, so you have your master CV that you're happy with, you have your supplementary document, you can then build a prompt. Or potentially an agent if you're that sophisticated with use of AI. On Claude it would be a project, and you can give it a good frame of reference to say this is me, don't hallucinate, don't make up context or experience, stick to these documents, but then enable you to then upload the job description and job information, including information about the company, to make sure that the prompt will then adjust your CV accordingly. Never send anything out without checking it first. Make sure that every single line in that CV you can discuss and give an example of when you get through to the interview. If you can't, it shouldn't be on there.
Really helpful. I think many of us, the simple step of telling your AI you will be speaking to AI will help us with that, right? And making sure the prompts are on point. So thank you for that. I want to kind of scale back a little bit beyond just looking at our individual CVs and resumes, thinking about the job landscape as a whole. You're based in Bristol in the UK, but this is a global advancement that we're seeing here, and the economy is tight, right? We're seeing redundancies across the UK. We're seeing layoffs in the US. Geopolitics are reshaping who gets hired, where they get hired. What does advancement actually look like right now? So for those who are looking, perhaps maybe they're not making a tremendous shift, but thinking about improving or building or moving up in their careers, what does that look like right now?
Yeah, I think there's so much going on in terms of the broader landscape and context that we're in right now. I mean, for reference, May this year compared to May in 2023, we are currently at half the number of vacancies that there were 3 years ago. So I think we have to have that in mind. That was very much a post-COVID anomaly. It will never happen again in terms of that volume. So where we see people coming back onto the job market now that haven't been for the last couple of years, it's a huge shock and it feels very unsettling. And there's lots in the press about AI replacing jobs being offshored to countries where labour is cheaper, etc. So it creates fear, right? It doesn't set you in a good headspace when you're initially approaching the job market. In terms of how to create that advancement, I mean, the golden goose is to get a new job with a job title that suggests increased seniority, better pay grade, and a broader level of responsibility that allows you to grow as a human and develop your skills. Advancement can be some of those things, but not all of them. I believe in this current, fast-moving, white-collar workplace, there is the opportunity there if you look for it, and if you put yourself in the room, and if you ask. And I think particularly as women, we're not very good at that. You know, the stats have not shifted in my entire recruiting career. Women will only apply for stuff if they think they're at least 90-95% of a match. Men will apply if they think they're a 70% match. So we're really not helping ourselves. And I think internal advancement or externally applying for new jobs is exactly the same. We're not very good at asking. So if there's a particular project or a secondment or an opportunity to shadow somebody in C-suite for a particular meeting or a particular piece of work or a culture change piece, ask. If we're putting ourselves forward and we're able to build very slowly in the right direction, even if we're getting told no initially, we're showing that our hand is always up. We're always interested to take on more. We're always interested to further ourselves. Make sure that you're spoken about well in the rooms that you're not in, so that when those opportunities informally do happen, you're the first person that comes to mind.
It's really helpful, and it begs the question of resilience, right? So we can think about these individual wins, and I know you and I have talked in the past about individual wins and taking those conversations at face value and kind of reframing your headspace as you think about the job search. But for many, that can be disheartening, right? It's disheartening to see denials. They're adding on the pressure of perhaps unemployment, right? The idea that they need to just get a job as fast as they can because of that shifting economy that we've talked about. How does staying in the right headspace actually impact whether you get the job? And how do you protect that headspace as you're looking for the next role or the next move?
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, it really is night and day. I can tell within seconds of somebody being in an interview where they are emotionally, and it really comes across and can not only distract from the candidate's capabilities and how they're trying to communicate, but also it can mean that they're not able to focus on giving clear, articulate responses or being their truest version of themselves, which is what I want to see in an interview. I want to know who you are. I want to have a snapshot into what it would be like to work with you. What's our collaboration going to be like? How well can you express what you've done before? And ultimately, what skills do you have? So yeah, it's so important. There's a few tips that I would share for those that have been laid off or made redundant, therefore are at home and not in the workplace, which I think is the hardest place to be job hunting from, especially when the news and social media channels can be so terrifying at times when it comes to the job market and what the optics are on that. So there's a few things that I would suggest doing. Get out of the house every single day to an appointment. Not when you feel like getting up, not when you think you're ready and you've drifted from 8:30 to 10:30, but make sure that you have something that's time bound. Stick to that discipline. That could be a class at the gym, it could be meeting a friend for an appointment, anything that means that you have that social connection. In terms of work-related activities that I would suggest people take up, definitely volunteering where you can. Again, having that sense of community, that collaboration, sense of purpose for yourself is so important to maintain your morale and make sure your sense of self-worth is intact. In terms of developing your career, there are so many networking opportunities and events for every sector, be that online or in person. I would lean towards the latter, again referring back to getting out of the house, having a time-bound appointment to attend to, making sure that you're making connections within your particular niche or within the arena that you might be interested in moving into. You never know what leads to what and who leads to who. Certainly where I'm from in the West Country, I think it's more like a 2-degree separation. I'm regularly sent messages by somebody who I haven't met yet who knows 3 people that know me, and 2 of them have said hi. So making sure that you are making those connections, following up with a LinkedIn message afterwards. Lovely to meet you at that event, no doubt bump into you again sometime. It doesn't take much more than that, but nonetheless it maintains your confidence. The other thing that I think is really important if you are sat at home is to continuously learn. There are so many free courses available in, again, whatever sector or particular niche skill you might be looking to develop yourself in. I mentioned it before, but companies are looking for AI literate candidates. It's not necessarily explicit across all job descriptions yet, but we are seeing it creep in. There is no reason why you can't spend 1 to 3 hours a day doing some online courses that are freely available. They'll help with your confidence, they'll give you something to talk about in an interview, but more importantly, they'll fill that gap on your CV where sadly some will be incredibly judgmental about you not working. So use that gap to your advantage, demonstrate that you've been able to stay productive, motivated, and that you're a self-starter and that you work on yourself by evidencing that with how you've chosen to spend your free time.
Discipline. That's not a new trend. It's something that we actually I find in the world of artificial intelligence. It's more difficult to stick to that, right? Because there are some quick wins, or how easily you can put something through a tool and produce it. So really, really treating the job search like a job, perhaps. But
Absolutely. I think all of these things though allow you to maintain your headspace,
yes,
therefore be your authentic self and not go into either an AI doom spiral or just completely lose the plot of self-worth. And when you're at home isolated because the people that you live with are leaving the house for, educational work, you can get in your own head, and it's a really dangerous space to get into.
absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you for that. I'm taking notes for myself currently, a reminder of discipline. In terms of that human connection, we've talked about it in so many ways. So we've talked about it from the applicant side, updating your LinkedIn page, make sure you're engaging, treating every conversation, as a quick win. But before AI was even really, at the scale that it is today, there was always the question of how you set yourself apart or show your human side on the CV, because it is difficult to cut through that noise regardless, right? And for many, I am more than the piece of paper in front of you. Are there any tips? I mean, you've mentioned quite a few already, but anything specifically that you would recommend so that human side gets through when you're putting across your CV or resume or job application?
Yeah, absolutely. You've got 2 opportunities there, as well as the broader use of language that you have across your CV, but your profile at the top and then hobbies and interests at the bottom. They're really your landing spots for being able to communicate who you are as a human. With your profile at the top, I mean, there's so many cliches that I see on a very regular basis, and that's often where I can tell within seconds that AI's been used, because there's certain words that AI loves. My advice for that would be actually ask ex-colleagues and old managers how they would describe you in 3 to 5 words. Do the research, collect information about how your professional persona comes across, and then make sure that you're able to articulate that well within those 4 or 5 lines at the top. In terms of hobbies and interests, personally, that's the best place on the CV for me. I want to know who you are. I want to know if you've got a sense of ambition, if you've got a sense of humour. I want you to come to life. I don't just want you to turn up and do your job. I've asked to employ a human, not an agent. So I want your humanness here. I want to know if you bake. I want to know if you've just done a half marathon. I want to know if you've written a book. I want to know if you care about movies. All of these things make you who you are. Doesn't necessarily mean that I've got anything to offer in that conversation, but I want to get a sense of what drives you and how you like to interact.
Interesting. So another myth busted, right? People are reading your introduction and people are reading your hobbies and skills when it comes to the application process. I know that that's always in question. Is anyone really looking at my intro?
Yeah,
So thank you.
so 4,000 CVs, right?
Yeah.
4,000 applicants for, say, 1 to 3 jobs if you're recruiting several roles within the same space. How on earth do you then select that down to your long list, which will be maybe 50 max? How do you then draw that down again to half it again, and then select for interview? You then have to get into that minutiae. The other thing that I'm seeing happen a lot as a pushback to lazy apply, that's what we call it. You know, a bit like the dating apps, you can swipe to apply. I mean, that's great, but that's enabling the volume of applications to come through. And it doesn't necessarily mean that there's any kind of matching being done. It just means that there's volume. So as a counterbalance to that, yes, there are more hurdles in place to get through to an interview stage. But I would really encourage people to take the time to do those, because the chance of people taking the time to actually go through that online quiz or that video interview with an AI, people opt out. They don't want to. They don't want to engage with the tech. They don't want to engage with additional screening. They find it abrasive. But actually, your chances are double, triple if you do take the time and make the effort. The other thing to be aware of is some of these AI tools that are in place that will allow a recruiter to see a perceived ranking as to how motivated a candidate is against this particular job, will have things like trackers against the careers page, against the company page. So it will be able to tell if you've taken the time and effort to actually have a read through, watch the video of the founder explaining why this idea came to light, have a quick check of the values or some of the employees' quick 30-second videos about why they like working at this particular organisation. These things matter now more than ever.
Absolutely. And as we think about what matters more than ever, there's a lot. There's a lot in the list and so many tips you've shared today, Sharon. I want to really think about and encourage our audience to continue to think about those practical steps and what works for them. What we're hearing from you is not only looking for jobs that suit you or roles that suit you, but building a process that does individually suit you and allow you the motivation, the safe mental space, et cetera, to really make sure that this is not as defeating as it may feel right now. With that in mind, just to close us out of today's conversation, because we can go on, right? We've talked before, we can go on and on. But just practically speaking, for the audience today who perhaps is feeling defeated, or maybe they have yet to set out, I'm talking to you from New York, so just the start of our day here. What is one practical thing that they can think about this week, right, just to get started on their next step, whether it's advancement, whether it's looking for a new role, wherever they are on the journey? What would you say is the practical first step that they can tackle this week?
I mean, I'm a big fan of starting with the end in mind. Where do you really want to get to? What does that look like? What does you thriving at work mean to you? Because everyone has a different version. If your life load is heavy, you might not want super fast progress. Might not want to work in a startup context. So I think starting with the end in mind, what do you want your next 1, 2, 5 years in your working life to be and look like, and then build back from there.
Incredible, incredible. I think it's easy when you're caught up in the momentum or lack of momentum to candidly settle. Just feel so eager to get the next role, but thinking of it backwards, right? Where do you want to be? Really eliminates the idea of settling and making sure that you're making meaningful progress forward. Well, Sharon, this has been incredibly insightful. I know it's insightful to our audience. You've, like we said earlier, with over 20 years experience in the recruitment space, we're so fortunate to have your perspective and expertise. So thank you again for joining us. Absolutely. To the Workview community, we are continuing to have conversations with experts like Sharon to make sure that we are all putting our best foot forward and building a future that works for us as individuals. So we encourage you to continue to follow this series. You can find us at workview.io, and of course, check out Your View, which helps actually map out those career perspectives and using AI to your advantage as you think about tailoring those CVs and the job search that works for you. Instead of the other way around. So again, Sharon, thank you. And thank you to our community members, and we will see you next time.